Hellhouse LLC 2015.
Hellhouse
Hellhouse,
LLC.
a found footage documentary.
What does the LLC stand for?
Limited
I
Liability Corporation. Everyone knows that.
Limited Liability Corporation.
Hellhouse LLC, 5 years after an unexplained malfunction caused the death of 15 tourgoers and staff on the opening night of a Halloween haunted house tour, a documentary crew travels back to the scene of the tragedy to find out what really happened. Directed by Stephen Cognetti, who went on to direct two more Hell House movies and really hasn't done much more as far as I'm aware.
He
And
directed two more
more.
Hell House movies?
And
Yes,
they
they're-
did not get good reviews. Because
Well,
yeah.
this one has not gotten great reviews either, in all fairness.
but
and I
it's
think it's a
gotten
great
better
movie.
than the other two.
It's a type of movie that's like it didn't need a sequel. It was fine as its own thing. Anyway.
I could see it as an anthology. It'd be a fun anthology.
Yeah, I guess okay. It could work as an anthology. I don't know.
They made a Hell
Anyway.
House, a Hell Home. LLC.
Hell is where the heart is.
That's the tagline.
That's it. That's our show.
Yeah, I love this movie. It definitely, we were talking about it earlier, in terms of scares and stuff, it got me just as much as The Exorcist did. It's just that terror of people being in situations that they can't escape from. Just gets me. And there's just some really creepy scenes and stuff. This so far is my favorite movie that we've covered in this whole list.
Good to hear.
Mm.
This was a blast, a lot of fun to watch. I loved the way the story was told, the script and the twists and turns along the ways were just brilliant. I really, as much as it scared me, I kind of want to watch it again. This was a great movie.
Yeah, I think that this is, to me, the scariest movie that we've reviewed so far. It might also be my favorite movie that we've seen. It's a fun ride. It sets up a interesting mystery right off the bat, and you can kind of see the strings a little bit of oh, so it's gonna probably go this direction, and it ends up going that direction. But it's fun to be there for the whole time. The characters aren't great, but they aren't annoying to watch, which is very good in a found footage film. It doesn't waste much time at all. Like I said in the last episode, with horror films like this, they usually come in at about an hour and a half. So there doesn't seem to be much fat on this movie. Another thing that I mentioned in the last episode is I love reoccurring sets and the audience getting to learn the layout. And multiple times they go through the same hallways, and you recognize little things there's the piano, there's the basement. Even at the beginning, not knowing what was in the basement, they set it up really well. The idea of all these people just running away from it, and this. Even people who were there with cameras don't know what was in that basement. They just remember how terrified everyone was and everyone running away from them. It's a really fun ride, and it's something that I really want to go back and watch again.
It's good to hear you guys liking this. So I will say this was my recommendation, a little hidden gem that I found. And I watched it probably a little over a year, maybe 2 years ago. And I was worried. I very much enjoyed it when I watched it, and I was very worried that maybe it would not hold up. But boy, did it. I love this movie. I love how unconventional the scares are. It's the sort of movie that could very easily become very cliche and have very easy, cheap scares. I think the scares are fun and thrive on silence rather than loud jumps. I think it's such an interesting concept. I think the performances are really well done, actually. It's a found footage style movie, and by and large, I think it's very believable. I think it's super easy to get lost in this world and feel like it's something that really happened. I feel like it's so easy to get your mind set up into it, and they just do a really good job of toying with this concept of you knowing that things are not what they seem, and the terror you have watching other people that don't know that yet. And the suspense is built up with having this one horrid night and then going back to the beginning and the build up towards it as things get progressively worse and worse. I think it's so fun and innovative, and I think it's one of the most underrated horror movies I've seen, because it's rock solid. I don't have any complaints about it. I really enjoy it. I think it's a really good trademark of a good horror film, that you've already seen it, you know what happens, but you're still scared, because at that point it is disturbing and unsettling. Not just, adult peekaboo, not just, oh, well, it's going to jump out at you when you're not expecting. I could watch it right now for a third time, and I would still be so unsettled.
Oh, that's another thing that I'd like to mention, is that this movie, like with its without relying on jump scares, like it sets it up to where it wants the audience to, like, for their eyes to dart around the screen to keep double checking to see if there is actually anything behind them. Like, there could be someone moving in the background, there could be someone who's not supposed to be there, just kind of standing there, which they kind of hint at throughout the entirety of the film.
And it's funny because, like, there's the point very early on in the film where they're seeing the house for the first time, and the camera, the documentary crew edits the footage specifically to zoom in on this one figure that's ominously standing in the background. But that's the only time the film does that work for you. Like, every other time after that, it's the viewer's responsibility to see the hidden figures for themselves.
I forgot to look up the budget for this movie, but whatever budget they had, they used it effectively, and they had, like, they made everything look convincing enough to where I was just in it.
I would think it'd be pretty low budget.
But that's the one thing that I love about low budgets. Sometimes the constraint could breed creativity and force people to, like, think outside the box and give, like, logic to different things. And, like, they even added logic to the reason why they're recording everything. Is the guy was like, no, we just want to record this and use it as, like, promotional material for next year in case they catch anything.
Yeah, the found footage device never feels unrealistic.
Yeah.
Which I feel like often happens in found footage movies. It reaches a point where it doesn't feel accurate anymore. But you never get that feeling from this film.
And I just think they do, and again, it would still be good and serve its purpose just as being a scary horror film. I think that'd be completely fine. And it is one of those. But I think they do such a good job narratively of making this feel like it's a real event. Like, I look back on it feeling like it's a real thing that happened. And the way they, go back to the night, and they have, like, analysts and historical speculators and, talking about, people had different theories about what happened this night. And, certain people don't talk about it anymore. And I think it's such an interesting world that they built, and you believe it so wholeheartedly. The house feels like it's a real place, and, like, I think about how scary it'd be just to be in that basement waiting for something to happen. How these things manifest themselves, how these demons and entities manifest themselves. It's really interesting.
And just that moment about halfway, maybe 3/4 of the way through the film, where one of the historians they're interviewing says, I don't think any of these kids knew the history of this building when they bought it. Just that moment gives you such a strong sense of just terror and foreboding.
Yeah.
And that doesn't even come from cinematography or jump scares or anything like that. That's just storytelling.
Yeah.
It just gets you.
The house feels so alive.
Mm-hmm.
It makes you imagine. It makes you feel like you could have a nightmare inside this house.
Yeah.
And that something would manifest itself in just the right spot at just the right time. And, like, you think all the time about how these entities exist in this building and what causes them to. And yeah.
I would definitely recommend this to anyone who likes a good mystery, likes ghosts, likes lore, likes just being immersed in this world, and, like, with all this backstory that you don't know about and you don't get answers to. It's something very original. It's genuinely scary. It's paced well. It's super memorable. It doesn't rely on many jump scares. Yeah, no, I definitely recommend anyone who's just in the mood for, like, a good spooky movie to check it out.
I love this movie. This is one of my favorite horror movies. Again, super underrated. No one ever talks about it. I just happened to stumble across it myself, and I highly recommend anyone that is into horror see it. It's probably the most, I think the most intense horror movie we've seen so far. Not particularly gory or violent, but just a sense of dread and foreboding. If you're just looking for eerie and spooky movies, maybe not, but if you're looking to genuinely be scared, but not feel like it's a guilty pleasure doing so, to actually be scared by a good movie, I recommend you check it out.
Yeah, I'd also recommend it, not just as Michael said because it's a great horror movie with great scares and all that, but just as a good story. Like, this is a very well told story, and I think that if you like great stories and those kinds of twists and turns, and to be taken along an interesting plot with a lot of suspense, this is a great film for you.
Whoa, we did episode 6. Yeah, next up, we got Scooby-Doo, 2002. Yeah.
Scooby-Doo 2002.
Early 2000.
We're looking forward to the same sense of terror and foreboding we got from this one out of Scooby-Doo.
Hopefully we're not going to lose too many of our many subscribers after our very intense upcoming episode.
Oh yeah, no, it's gonna be an intense one. We might even get emotional at some point.
Hold on to your butts.
All of your butts.
Clench those cheeks.
Clench them.